Okay, so our next recipe that we're focusing on is a dessert. And so again, obviously, traditionally, there's so many desserts at any type of holiday party. But if you are, looking to lose weight or manage your weight, we've taken a spin on your traditional chocolate tart.
Yes.
So, I think that a lot of people, there's so many diets out there. We know that through research that, that there are different types of cancers that are related to increased weights. So it is important to manage that. Certainly, the holidays are a time to enjoy, right? The people around you, the food that you're eating. So I want you to take this with a grain of salt, right? If you do feel like having a chocolate tart that is, not low fat or low sugar or whatever, just manage your week and kind of figure out what else you're going to be eating throughout that week or day. But, enjoy it if that's the case, right? So you don't want to be too hard on yourself with these types of things because it is a time to enjoy.
Yes, and it is the holidays.
Yeah.
So we're making dessert. And this is actually a nice little spin on a traditional sort of chocolate ganache. And it was actually from George Brown, some of the students there, and I loved it so much. They did an incredible job. And we just did a little riff on it, but I think it turned out incredibly well. So I want to share it with you today. And we're using nuts, lots of nuts as sort of the source of that sort of healthy fat.
Yes.
We're using two different types. We're going to be using some cashews, and we're going to be using some hazelnuts as well. This is sort of like the large dessert version of like a Ferrero Rocher. If you love those.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start off with the crust. Okay, so we're making the crust. We're going to use hazelnuts and oats. Love our oats. We try to stick them into desserts. I know it's not that desserty, but it's going to make a really simple crust. So hazelnuts and oats, really easy. Don't have to muck around with pastry. That's going to go in. I'm going to add a little bit of maple syrup. So this is still sugar, still type of sugar, but it's the one we prefer to use, right?
Yeah. It has a lower glycemic index, and you're in control. Right. The other thing to think about is when you are trying to manage your weight, it's important to think about that this is more of a behavioral change, right? So kind of being mindful about how you're eating, what you're eating, so that these changes can be long-term. Okay, and a lot of times, by bringing awareness into what you're eating can help. There's a lot of links with external factors, right? So it's not necessarily what you're eating, but how you're eating it, right? So just taking a moment to pause and, are you eating this chocolate tart because you are tired or sad, or are you bored, right? Or is it because you really, really want it and it's in celebration? And so either way, it's a mindful exercise and, trying to do it without judgment, which obviously can be hard. But the point is that when you are trying to lose weight, a big piece of that is the behavioral change, right? And so bringing awareness and being mindful around the foods you're choosing and when you're choosing them is part of the puzzle piece in terms of helping that with the long-term effects.
All right, so hazelnuts, oats, a little bit of maple syrup, and 1 tablespoon of grapeseed oil. You can use really any oil in here. You can even use like olive oil if you want. Put a little twist on it. But grapeseed oil is neutral. It doesn't really have much of a flavor, so that's why we're using it here. And then we're going to pulse this up. Oh, I plug it in first, if you don't mind. You think by now I've figured out how to use these machines. And we want to break it down until it's fine, like almost like a large textured breadcrumb. I don't want it super fine, but I want it to kind of look like that. Whoa.
A little crumble.
There you go, like that. So you can see it's like kind of crumbly, but it's not super, super fine. I do want some texture still to it. Okay, so that's the breadcrumb, or the crust rather, and that's gonna go into the bottom of your baking dish. Again, I've lined mine with parchment paper because it's gonna make my life a lot easier. All right, so that's gonna go in. This is a lot easier than making your own pastry, I can tell you that much.
And healthy.
Yeah, and you got lots of these nuts and the oats. Really, really great. That maple syrup as well, it's gonna sweeten it a little bit, but it also helps to bind everything together as well. All right, so.
Should I put this on the side?
No, I still need that.
Oh, you need it, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna sort of spread it around like this, and then you can use spoon or spatula. Just sort of press it down into your pie dish or cake pan or whatever it is. And this is sort of a nice little cheat for making any sort of dessert. Like you can do this and make like a reverse apple crumble kind of thing, or do any sort of fruit pie. Or all right, so we're pressing this into the bottom of the pan, and then that goes into the oven, and you want to bake it just until golden brown, so about 15 minutes or so. Okay. While that's baking, we can do our filling. Really easy. Instead of, again, chocolate ganache would be usually like a lot of chocolate, usually cream as well, maybe some egg yolks. We're gonna make this super simple. The majority of the base is actually gonna be cashews, okay? Now, I've soaked these overnight. So you can do this overnight if you know you're gonna make it the next day. If you're coming home and you have to make it now, that's not gonna work for you. So a way to quick soak this is just to put your cashews in a pot, cover it with cold water, bring it up to a boil. Once it starts boiling, remove it from the heat and just let it sit there for like 15 minutes. Okay, and then you can drain it. And that'll sort of mimic the same texture as if you soaked it overnight. Okay?
So you want to soak them in order for them to get softer.
Soft, yeah. So these have soaked overnight, they're nice and soft. Drain off the water, and we're gonna add that into our food processor or blender. You can do this with a blender too. Works really well. I'm gonna add a little bit of dark chocolate. Like this is it. You don't need a lot for this whole thing. So considerably a lot less than you would use for like a typical dessert like this.
Yeah, and we're using dark chocolate here because we know, again, there's lots of research to show that there's higher amounts of antioxidants, so those flavonoids, okay, which are important for heart health, right? So using dark chocolate that has 75% cocoa or more, the one that you want, 75% cocoa or more.
A couple tablespoons of cocoa powder. That again is going to give us that nice sort of chocolate flavor. And we're going to add a little pinch of salt, which might seem odd in desserts, but it's just going to really punch the flavor of that chocolate. Yes, question?
The cocoa I
Yes.
saw from a previous demonstration. Did you say choose the ones that are Dutch processed or choose the ones that are not Dutch?
For this one, either. Any works, because we're not, it's not, there's no leavening or anything required here.
What's the good one? Dutch processed?
Both are fine. It
In
just
this
depends,
recipe.
Yeah, it depends if you're making a cake or something that requires some sort of leavening. Then you can go for the non-Dutch. Usually works a little bit better. Yeah, something like this. Any cocoa powder works because this is a refrigerator recipe. We don't have to cook this after. So a little bit of sea salt, and we're gonna add a little bit of maple syrup as well. Again, I don't really have a lot of chocolate in here, so it's not going to be very sweet if I don't add a little bit of maple syrup. And again, we're making a whole. All right, so just to recap, we have cashews in here, dark chocolate, cocoa powder, maple syrup, and a pinch of sea salt. Okay? If you want to add orange zest or vanilla or cinnamon, you can absolutely punch up the flavor with those things as well. And then just blend it. Now we wanted to try to get it as smooth as possible. You're not going to get it super smooth because of all the nuts in there. But we want to break it down. And if it needs a little bit more liquid, you can add a little bit more liquid to it. It should be the consistency of almost like peanut butter. Okay, so it's definitely not very thin, but it should be spreadable as well.
You're welcome.
But once you set that in the shell, and again, this is why we use the parchment, because that pops right out. And you have this beautiful chocolate tart, hazelnut tart, ready to go. It's, it does require a little bit of work, but to make like a nice dessert, it really doesn't take too much time at all. And then from here, if you want to dress it up, maybe a little orange, what do you think?
Yum. Chocolate and orange is a great combination. Tastes yummy. No.
No from there. Well, I'm going to do a little bit for my version here. And just a little bit of that orange. And it's nice with the color on top as well. That's it. All right. So there it is. Chocolate hazelnut tart. And there's 2019.